We actually have two very different visions of 82nd that are finally clashing with each other in this moment.
Did you guys catch this absolute mic drop of a speech that TriMet board member Tyler Frisbee gave at their meeting 2 days ago? To set the stage for this, I'm sure some of you have followed my reporting about the 82nd Avenue Transit Project. There's this big debate on how much of a dedicated bus lane should be in the project. The city took over ownership of this from ODOT, which had treated it like a state highway for years, but now it's in the process of being redesigned as more of a local neighborhood main street. But even with that, there are some local business owners, including the Portland Metro Chamber and other folks who are trying to rally support to stop these bus lanes. So TriMet is in the process of trying to balance those competing needs, and a decision about the future bus lane is going to happen really soon. At this meeting, they didn't make any decisions about these business access and transit or BAT lanes. They just did more talking about it. But it seemed like this is the meeting where board member Tyler Frisbee really came out to stand on her business. Now, who is Tyler Frisbee? She's not just some interested transit person that happened to get a seat on the TriMet board. Frisbee is a mover and shaker. She is somebody who has decades of experience in transportation organizing. I first met her when she worked as an advisor to U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer. I used to see Frisbee every year at the National Bike Summit in D.C. After spending 6 years with Congressman Blumenauer, Frisbee was the policy director at the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. She did a short stint in the private sector. Then she spent almost 7 years at Metro, which is Portland's regional elected government. She was their interim director of government affairs and policy development at Metro. And today she's director of the Institute of Metropolitan Studies at Portland State University. So enough of me. Let's get back to her speech where she is defending bus lanes on 82nd in a way that I have not seen anyone do so far around this project, and in a way that I think is extremely persuasive. And I really encourage you to watch till the very end when the TriMet project manager, the main dude, Michael Kaiser, responds to Frisbee's comments.
We actually have two very different visions of 82nd that are finally clashing with each other in this moment. We literally had someone get up and say, 82nd is a highway, stop treating it like it's a neighborhood. And then we had people get up and say, 82nd is my neighborhood. We've been asking for it to be a neighborhood street and serve the neighborhood for 30 years. That, to me, was the question, right? This is the moment. Is 82nd a highway, or is it a community? Is it a street that serves the community that it's in? And it is correct that it was built as a highway over 100 years ago. It is an incredibly different landscape and neighborhood than it was when it was built. And I would argue that the decision has actually already been made. It is no longer a highway. That was made with the transfer of 82nd to the city of Portland. And it was made when we started this project, right? You don't run frequent service down a highway. If that is what we intend that road to be, then we shouldn't be building sidewalks on it. We shouldn't be building bus improvements on it. But in response to what we heard from the community, they've been organizing for that to be a different kind of street. I understand people's attachment to the way a road was built 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. But I think there has been really clear discussion that that community looks really different now, particularly in the last 30 to 40 years. It has changed dramatically. And there have been a series of decisions that say we need to change the road to reflect the community and the landscape that it's in now. And to me, the most ambitious transit project on our busiest bus line in the entire region that will only grow, right? That is a part of our city that is only growing, and more people are moving there, and we are seeing more transit need along that space. That is a very clear answer about where that community is going and what that community needs for us in the future. That does not disregard the fact that change is hard, and that does not disregard the fact that there are folks who have built up entire approaches to their business based on the way that street was. But we are building a project that's not meeting the next 5 years of need. We're building a project that needs to meet the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years of need. Big picture, I think that's where we are. And, Michael, I've heard you talk about being a community builder and a city builder. That is what this project needs to do. And to some extent, actually, the community's built, right? They went ahead and built without the transportation service, without the transit service. And we're just trying to catch up. Bless you, baby. Good job. This is where things get interesting, right? And it is where you can say, Yes, I hear you have a concern around the left turn lanes here. Here are different ways we can mitigate that. Let's look at some of these options. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is your clientele going to change, right? Each of those stores has an individual proportion in terms of who gets there by bus, who gets there walking, and who gets there by driving. That is going to change after this project. But our goal is that we are bringing enough new ridership there by the bus. And, PBOT is working also to make it possible by foot, that they are actually seeing more folks visiting. And that is my sort of second big picture comment. I have heard a lot from folks asking we want more data on business impact. And my response has been, what we have when we look at battling implementation across the country, much less internationally, shows almost uniformly an increase in foot traffic and in support for the businesses that rely and depend on that foot traffic. And frankly, even businesses that think of themselves as car dependent actually often see a much more significant increase in their foot traffic and folks coming off the bus that ends up being more than making up for any potential car loss. What I have had said to me is, well, we don't believe that, basically, or it's different here. And it is hard for me to then get to the next stage of a conversation, because it's like, well, what are we going to turn around for you that you're going to believe if your answer is always just, that data doesn't meet my needs, that data is not what I want. When we look at the best data we have across the country, real life BAT implementation and its impact on businesses, to me, it is very heartening. And what it says, it's a story of resiliency. It's a story of these projects, they change the way that folks get there, but overall, they're bringing more folks to the door of your business. So I guess I'm using this as a little bit of a soapbox to kind of push back, because I don't know how to keep having a conversation of just like, I don't believe that. And I think the question that we have that we want to work with folks on is, how can we help make this work so that it's not about preserving the way that people get to you right now. It is about, what does this look like in the future? What do your next 10, 20, 30 years as a business look like around 82nd? Because let me tell you, that community is changing, and you're going to have folks getting there differently no matter what. And frankly, sometimes just having the same conversation 6 different times doesn't actually change the conversation. And so I would encourage us to think about how we can have the important conversations and the effective conversations with people that understand their needs and try to help find a good path forward. If they don't want to participate in that, having that conversation 6 times is not useful. And so I want to find a way to work with all of our folks, with all of the community folks who live along there, make sure everyone's voice is heard, to find a way to meet needs and address needs when we can, and acknowledge that this community has changed and is changing, and we need to meet that.
Thank you for that. I would just say, as a delivery group, we're aligned with everything you've said.